Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley take us on a Spider-Man tale through the swingin' 60s. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an irate review, and we're talking about Spider-Man Life Story number 1, written by Chip Zdarsky, with art by Mark Bagley. So Mark Bagley is a classic Spider-Man artist from the Amazing Spider-Man series, as well as Ultimate Spider-Man, and Chip Zdarsky did a pretty fantastic job on Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man, as well as a number of other comics from Marvel. So he is going back in time to tell a story of Spider-Man through the ages, through the decades specifically, and we're starting off issue number 1 with the 60s, so let's see what he can do with it. Spider-Man Life Story is a really interesting concept because we know that he existed during these time periods, especially in classical issues of Amazing Spider-Man. But as he moves forward through these various decades, going into the 70s, 80s, 90s, you'll wonder why doesn't Spider-Man age at all? So this is a suspension of disbelief type story. He will experience the things of these decades, but he won't necessarily reflect the things of these decades in his age. He's going to be perpetually a very young individual as we see him evolve over time. And the way that we open things up, he's already been Spider-Man for 4 years. He's lost Uncle Ben, he's been handling things, and hopefully he's going to become better himself. However, in the year of 1966, Spider-Man still has to tackle various things about social responsibility. This is the time of the Vietnam War. He's questioning himself about whether he should go partake as a military operative for the United States, if he should go over there and use his powers to defend other individuals. But the biggest thing right now is that he can't make it to class on time, and there's a number of other things going on, including things with Harry Osborn, his best friend, and now Norman, who introduces himself in a relatively interesting way. But as he gets to class, we find that he's very much still enraptured with Gwen Stacy, and he's still curious as to how he can make these things work. He tries to be as charismatic and charming as he can, far from the young boy that he once was in high school. And when they reach out and touch each other's hands, you can tell that there's some sort of connection. But that doesn't keep Professor Warren, aka the Jackal, from messing things up for Peter. The one thing that he knows is that he's got to go to a party. Flash Thompson is enlisted in the military and is going to be shipping off for Vietnam sometime soon, but he needs money if he's going to have some sort of good time and, well, maybe buy Gwen Stacy that drink that she really deserves. So that's when we get the classic interactions between Peter and Jonah Jameson. And Peter, being the young college kid that needs money, is just trying to give him whatever he can to get a paycheck out of it. Betty Brant is there, another classic individual from the Spider-Man stories, and we see Iron Man interacting inside the Vietnam War, which again calls into question the morality of Spider-Man. Is he doing a disservice by not enlisting, by not enrolling in this, by not taking part in the conflict? And another person who isn't taking part in the conflict is a very different kind of character, Captain America. He's one that hasn't committed to the war effort in any way, and that really calls into question Spider-Man. If Cap goes, man, Spider-Man really needs to go. But the key point is that Flash Thompson is still having this party, and while Peter goes in and starts just trying to cut him down any way that he can, after all the kind of bullying that he received the previous years in high school, it turns into a situation where Peter is overcome by his shortcomings. Flash is leaving for war. It's a possibility that he will never come back. That's something that Gwen reiterates to him, and Peter, coming to terms with that, goes over and starts to apologize to Flash. And Flash apologizes to him. He's like, I know what's going on, and I know that I didn't make it easy for you. I am proud to wear this uniform, and I understand what it makes people think of me when they see me in it. But it's really easy for me to make this decision because, well, that's what Spider-Man would do. And Peter's just like, but Spider-Man's not going to go fight a war. He's not even signing up. What would he do? It's just like, no, man, he's saving us out on the streets. He's putting his life on the line every single day. The least I can do is go put my life on the line for others, which gives us the impression of the inherent nobility of Flash Thompson that we would come to know later on in the comic books when he became Venom, or Agent Venom. And then the real magic starts to happen in this issue. The interaction with Norman, the way that he understands and the way that he knows everything about Peter, the immediate tingle of his spider sense as he looks up on the shelf and sees the Goblin bomb. Norman just leans right in close, threatening everybody. It's like, you'll survive, I'll survive, but will everybody else? Meet me outside in the alleyway in about 30 seconds. Make sure that nobody comes with you, otherwise everybody dies. So much tension that's built up and decompressed over the next page. You see the tension sweat on Peter's forehead as he looks over at Gwen, at MJ, at Harry, and then he slowly makes his way out into the alleyway with Norman putting on his goblin costume, and then the quips start to happen. Peter, being scared out of his mind for himself and his friends, as determined by his internal monologue, is defending himself, basically building up this false bravado with these jokes and insults towards his enemy, so that way he can build himself up as a hero, that way he can make his escape and save the people that he really needs to. Because this is classic Green Goblin, fires some various laser beams from his fingers, throws a goblin bomb at him, and just blows him to smithereens, knowing that Peter is actually supposed to be the heir to Oscorp. He's just the perfect version version of his son. His son, Harry, he's not going to make anything of himself, but Peter's a genius. Peter is going out there and putting his life on the line. He's dedicated to these things. He is the one that should inherit everything that Norman has worked so hard for. If only he understood, and he's got goblin serum in his hand. He's about to feed it to him, but Peter just pulls down the billboard on him as it explodes in fire and electricity. And he thinks to himself, he knows my secret identity. Everything is going to fall apart, but I have to save him. He picks everything up, pulls Norman out of the fire. Norman, shocked by either the electricity or the concussion of the actual billboard itself, doesn't necessarily know who he is. And in that moment, Peter feels like everything's going to be okay. He's protected his family, he's protected his identity, and ultimately, he's got to make sure that he takes care of everything else, both in his education, his job, and his future. But as he's moving his way downtown, he sees Captain America fighting these guys, and one of them is about to shoot Cap in the back, but Spider-Man intervenes. Cap throws his shield, but then all of a sudden Cap is mobbed by his fan club, something that Spider-Man doesn't necessarily have experience with, but that creates a conversation. It allows Spider-Man and Captain America to interact, to allow Peter to really express his concerns. It's just like, don't I have an obligation? Don't I need to go over there? And Captain America's like, hey man, I was on ice for 20 years, and to be woken up from one war and to be in another one, and I don't necessarily think that this is just or it's right. However, you, with your selflessness, with your sacrifice, you go out there and put your life on the line every single day. You have a good idea. You have the right idea. And what you need to do is follow your heart, and that is going to tell you where you need to go. So, following his heart, he turns Norman Osborn in, they confiscate all of his goblin gear, and they're going to throw him in prison. He doesn't know what this is going to do to Harry, but he knows that it was the right thing to do. He needs to be a better friend to Harry Osborn. But at that moment, he remembers that he's still being a bad friend to Flash Thompson as he puts on his spider gear, swings away in front of Norman Osborn, and that might just spark a bit of a memory inside Norman's skull. And as he makes his way through Grand Central Station, he runs into Gwen Stacy, and he's just like, hey, where's Flash's train? I'm supposed to meet him. And then all of a sudden, he realizes that he's late. Another thing that is perpetually in Peter Parker's life, the fact that he can't make it on time to any place because he is being pulled in so many directions by his secret identity, by his regular identity, and life in general. He's just an everyman that is trying to put everything together the best way that he can. But as Gwen's kind of poking him in the chest, determining who he really is, she actually unbuttons a button, and she finds the Spider-Man suit underneath, which causes a moment of silence and a conversation that is going to have to happen sooner rather than later. But then as we flash into 1967, inside Vietnam, we see a group of soldiers that are about to attack an unarmed group of Vietnamese individuals, when all of a sudden a shield comes out of nowhere and just ricochets off of everybody. And then we see the traitor Captain America, according to this American soldier. And that is where we're going to pick up inside the 1970s, because this is going to lead into maybe like a Captain America Nomad timeline, as well as a few different disco interactions for Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So as far as Spider-Man Life Story number 1, first thing that I have to do is compliment Mark Bagley. Mark Bagley is a classic Spider-Man artist, doing work on Amazing Spider-Man from like issues 340, 350, 360. He was there for Carnage. He's done Venom. He's done a phenomenal amount of Spider-Man work. And then we've got Ultimate Spider-Man, which he did with Brian Michael Bendis. He is just the quintessential Spider-Man artist. When you think of Spider-Man, you think of people like Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, and Mark Bagley. Like, these are guys that are just the heart of the 1980s and 1990s version of Spider-Man that a lot of us have grown up with and have really learned to adore. However, when we're talking about the storyline, I think it's really interesting how Chip Zdarsky had the opportunity to blend like 100 issues worth of interaction into a very singular story structure and really hit the highlights, the resonant points of those various things. It doesn't take 15 or 20 pages to get to the bottom of Norman Osborn's single conversation. You can do that in 15 panels, 5 panels, a little bit less. The importance is the relationships that they're building. The importance is the tension that Norman has, how he interacts, how Spider-Man deals with his sense of responsibility when culture around him forces him to take on various things, make him feel obligated when he's already doing the best that he possibly can. And it's something that I feel like a lot of us could possibly relate to. Overall, I think that Spider-Man Life Story number 1 is a great introduction to the character, and it's a really good retrospective on what happened. I'm going to kind of ignore the entire timey-wimey thing as we go through this, and he doesn't age throughout the various eras, but I'm really excited to see what Chip Zdarsky has for the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and modern day. But I want to know what you guys think, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, and more.